Your neighbor tells you about the unstable man in the cul-de-sac who claims to have been abducted by aliens. And then there's the woman in town who claims to see Bigfoot all the time. Your boss, who you greatly admire, confides in you that he has started speaking with his wife daily when he gets home from work. She died 8 years ago. It's hard to believe this stuff, and you write these stories off as overactive imaginations. Are these people seeking attention, or are they a bit unstable? No matter what you think, if you're like me, you walk away wondering, what if that was true? The What If It's True podcast features stories by ordinary people like you and me. Something has happened to them, something so strange they are in agony unless they tell others. My name is Cameron Buckner, and the What If It's True podcast is available at whatifitstruepodcast.com and on all available podcast apps.
Welcome to Beast TV. What was that? You better get a fresh dip and buckle up.
Welcome to Beast TV. We are so glad that y'all have joined us tonight. We've got a bright young man that has been in this for 16, 18 years, grew up with it, and we'll go more into that later on. But we want to thank everybody that is tuned in, whether you're watching us now or watching us at a later time. And want to welcome my co-host tonight, Miss Sherry from the SAS Group. How you doing tonight, Sherry?
Hey, y'all. Hey. Good to be here. I see Mr. Porch is in the audience.
Yeah. Let's see. We're pushing 70 people already in chat. So that's fantastic.
This is going to be a good show.
It's going to be a great show. And so without further ado, then I want to introduce our guest, Mr. Mitchell Willey. Hey, Mitchell.
Hi. Thank you for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure.
Yes, sir. We think a lot of your mom. And it is no doubt y'all are cut from the same cloth. And we just appreciate
I think a lot of her too. And you know what? We could say exactly the same about you. As I was saying to you yesterday, I mean, we start our mornings listening to you with a cup of coffee on our way to work. And every day it puts a smile on our face knowing that there's other people out there that go through these same scenarios that we do.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? It don't have to be Bigfoot related, just anything that you would like to share.
Well, I grew up in Colville, Washington, and I love to fish. I'm the biggest angler. In fact, I've got a secondary page that I show all my catches and whatnot. So that's like been one of the biggest things for my life is fishing. It, like being on the lake is being in my church, basically. after high school, I had, man, a plethora of jobs. I've worked as an actor. I've worked at potato factories, assembly lines, and now I spend my days working as a journeyman framer for a very well-known construction company up here in Coeur d'Alene. I also spent 3.5 years in the Navy as a gunner's mate for a coastal riverine squadron, and that was the best, worst time of my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you've done a little acting?
I've done a little acting. That came to an abrupt end, actually. I was working for Scarywood, and I was a roaming actor, and I got hurt by one of the people that came in to enjoy the park. They came in with a knife, and I got hit in the leg. And I was even on the news and stuff. It was the wildest thing. It was at that point I figured the acting is just not for me.
Let's talk a little bit about your group, and we'll pull up a slideshow with the different members that are in your group. And just as we go through them, just tell us about each one.
Yeah, you bet. This is Tanya. Tanya is the existential empath. She does a lot of paranormal research for us. Her and Mom actually are the ones that typically handle the woo side of the research. And she's been such an asset to us too, because of a lot of the new research that's been breaking ground lately, such as like the mind speak and whatnot. She's really helped put forth a lot of information that's helped us in the field, and she's helped us tremendously in the field at that. This is my beautiful wife, Trinity. Trinity, by natural law, is just part of the group, but she's had some experiences herself that made her, question things in the woods a bit more. And in fact, one of them, we were actually able to cast our very first track, which was in our research area Delta, but it was the very first cast that we were ever able to cast, and this happened the beginning of the beginning of 2 years or 2 summers ago. So
it's awesome to have a spouse that has the same hobby as you do, and that you can work with and be able to bounce ideas off from.
Tell you what, Mark, I can't tell you enough. I have prayed too many times, and I only got one answer, and that was her right there, man. You are looking at my blessing.
Awesome.
So this is my wife's mother, Jamie. Jamie is, she recently became a believer, and this happened at a very, very interesting camping trip that we had taken last year up on the saddle behind Coeur d'Alene. And something that I hope we'll get into just a little bit later happened to her that was able to help us prove mind speak as well. And I've got that dated and timelined right here too. So maybe later on we can get into that too. But good. Jamie has been a big help in the field, and she's got a natural eye for finding structures and prints and things that just are out of place that don't necessarily make sense.
She wouldn't happen to be artistic, would she?
She's very artistic, very crafty.
That's kind of one thing that I noticed is people like one of our research partners, Shelley Reed. She's very artsy, and there's just something she could just be walking, and I may not necessarily see it, but it'll stand out like a sore thumb to her if something is not natural.
Yep. Yep.
And we
So
know
this
who
is
this fella is. We've had
Yeah,
him
you
on
guys know
before.
Dan very well. So Dan's been helping us with our online. He's our Facebook moderator for the research division. So the Legacy Discoveries research division is a bit different than the Legacy Discoveries actual page. So what I've got Dan working on right now, and he's doing a phenomenal job right now too at it, is he's working on the comparison from East Coast to West Coast right now. What he's doing is since he loves to do these interviews and document the interviews and compare interviews and stories, I'm having him do that across the states right now to find out basically exactly what groups are what groups are considered hostile, neutral, what groups are considered more, I guess, wild manish, and what groups are more considered more, I hate to say this word, but more primal. And I don't like saying that because we like to look, we choose to look at the forest people as they are, they're people. So that's what Dan's doing right now for us is he's comparing everything that we're finding over here to things that they're finding over there, and we're finding quite a bit of similarities and quite a bit of differences too.
That I have heard East Coast talking where they get together, East Coast and West Coast getting together and comparing the evidence and what they're seeing, and that's a great idea to do.
Nobody's done that yet.
Do what?
Nope, nobody's done that yet.
Yes, there are people doing it right now.
Okay, all right. Well, you guys know my mother. This is my mother, and Angelique has been, she's the co-founder of Legacy Discoveries. So when I was firing up Legacy Discoveries, she was actually still with Sasquatch Sisters Northwest, and they were researching the same areas that I was researching as well, and mainly the Hoodoo Valley. And I'm currently staying in the Hoodoo Valley right now. Right out the back door is the hot zone. Just the other night, we saw some UFOs actually even. And it's been very interesting staying out here again. But what Mom does, Mom has been doing a lot of the woo research with Tanya and the mind speak and whatnot. And Mom has been, I guess, coaching me in a way of researching differently than what we've been seeing out in the field. And typically what we've been seeing is kind of like the cause and effect. So you try and cause them to affect you at this point. And that's, you see that a lot in the paranormal field too, where they go and they rile up a spirit, or they try and charge up that entity, and all of a sudden things are happening so they can document it and stuff. Well, in our opinion, that's a very disrespectful thing to do, because that would be like somebody coming into your house and calling you names and throwing things around to try and get you to act up and everything. So we choose to look at that exactly the same as every time we're going into the woods. We are to be respectful. We are to announce who we are, announce our intent, and from there, always leave a gift, and the gift is typically tobacco. And this is something that we've learned through the elders, through the Colville tribe, and elders through some of the people that Mom knows over in the Lakota tribe as well.
Yeah.
So I guess
Go ahead.
I guess to add to that, Mom's been researching a lot of the Native American history with them too, as well.
That's some of the, I guess you could say, favorite topics that I have talked to her about, is her relationship with the Native Americans. And it fascinates me that their knowledge and how it's been handed down generation after generation. And
very safely guarded too, very safely guarded. There are things that I'm not even allowed to talk about, unfortunately.
Yeah. I was on a mountaintop on a Navajo reservation and talking to a Native American, and we were up there kind of camping out, and I remember him telling me, he says, you cannot speak of something, even if you whisper it in somebody's ear, the wind will take it and it can blow it anywhere in the world. That you have given up, this secret.
And to go or to piggyback off of that, even too, there's other things that the elders are very concerned about too. And you hear this in demonology as well, that if there's a certain name that you speak, that entity will then be conjured, I guess. So a lot of the tribal elders believe the same thing about what we call the unmentionables, and we'll just leave them at that. But the Bible has a great description of what the demons had taken all of the animals of the earth and mixed them together and created the unmentionables.
Okay, who is this feller?
Oh, this is me right here, and that in my hand is the very first cast that we took. So, so that cast actually measured, I believe, 16 and a half inches in length. And so this actually was a very interesting find, because this was the location where my wife had her first encounter. And she had that encounter from her and her friend going up. And we've dubbed this location as Site Delta. And what happened was her friend was going to collect moss for a terrarium for a tortoise that she had just got. And so she took my wife with her. She's like, I know this great little spot. It's on a switchback on this road. Let's go up this ravine and grab some of that. Well, they get up there, and the way my wife described it is that not 5 steps out of the car, a branch came and landed right next to them. And they both kind of froze there and looked at it, and were just kind of looking around and stuff and scanning the tree line. And another branch came at them at that point. So they both got back into the car. My wife called me, and then I told her, call my mom immediately so that we can document this. And then she ended up taking us out there. It was either a couple days later or a week later. But when she took us back out there, we found 8 or 9 tracks. And the one that you see was the clearest one that we could find. And as you can see, through the bottom and through the mid-tarsal break, there's a little root that sticks into the mid-tarsal break right there. I've got a video that I actually was showing on my presentation at Toppenish that showed how that stick got rocked and into this impression, which proved that it was something that had stepped on this, not something that was just kind of naturally indented and looked like a track or anything. So the stick was actually, it was laying flat, and then that foot came down, and when it stepped, it rocked that stick up, and that stick stayed just like that all the way until through we casted it.
Yeah, I have seen that before, and that adds a whole lot to the legitimacy of evidence being found like that.
What was really interesting about this track, though, Mark, is if you look at the toes, they weren't straight. They were cockeyed, way off to the side, just like that. And the toe or the rest of the foot was nice and straight, and I just right up at the toes there. It was the weirdest track that I have seen from them yet, and this ain't not anything like the cripple foot by any means, but it was definitely something that stood out to where we can now identify this individual if we come across them again by comparing tracks now. So now we can keep an eye on this one in particular. And so the story actually goes much further into depth. We actually ended up finding a cache just up the hillside from where we tracked this to. And what's interesting about this draw too is we even looked it up on Google Maps. There is no buildings up above where we had tracked and marked this location at, but it's private property. Unfortunately, we were not able to go back in there. We got chased out the last time. But after looking at this location on Google Maps and not seeing any buildings, it confirmed it that like we were dealing with something, because when we came into that cache area, there was a dog paw, what looked like a collarbone, and a shoulder blade, and a bunch of trash, rotten chicken, and I think it was a bag of vegetables, frozen veggies, and those were ripped open and stuff. And that chicken smelled awful too. But this stuff had been stored in that cache. And what this cache had looked like was this big old boulder that was tucked right up against the hillside. So I wish I had a pen and paper, but so you got this rock on this hillside, and then you got branches that laid directly across the top of the rock and shoved into the hillside, and then covered with pine needles and moss and really thick buckbrush and whatnot. And so looking further into this and everything, I told my mom, I was like, that's too small for one of them. That has to be like a refrigerator. That right there is a storage unit. And I've never seen that before. And it progressed even further last year when we found two more of them on opposite sides of the Coeur d'Alene Lake. So we found this one in particular up around, I will say the general area. So we found this track up around Spirit Lake and the cache with it. And then we found another cache that was up on the Saddle, or no, pardon me, Pack River. It was up Pack River. And then we found another cache that was all the way to the south in the reservation, in the Nez Perce Reservation on the south side of the Coeur d'Alene or lake there, pardon me. So it started, like, the more we started finding them, the more it started making sense that, yes, okay, so food storage is a thing, at least to an extent that we know of. So now we've got 3 locations that we can track these and figure out, are they continuously using them, or are these just like your regular structures that they just build, move on, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what all these structures mean. So
I have a question. Mitchell, well, you talked about the deformities of the feet. We've all seen that. What do you think those are? A birth defect, injuries? What's your opinion on those?
Oh gosh, that could be honestly anything in my opinion. That could be genetic. That could be a birth defect. That could be that could be something like the Cripplefoot story where he somehow, crushed his foot and has been walking on it ever since and stuff. And since then, it's, kind of seized up a bit, I guess. I am not sure. I can't give you a solid answer on that. I'm sorry.
That's kind of what everybody else said. It could be so many different things. I just didn't know if you had an opinion, especially when it's like 1 foot, and like possibly interbreeding or something, birth defects, whatever. So.
Yeah. Oh, and also that brings my brain to a different thought here. I should say a disclaimer too that just because Legacy Discoveries is looking into certain aspects does not mean that these are personal beliefs of our researchers. And we had kind of a little bit of bad luck with a few people that believed that these were our absolute beliefs. These are not absolute beliefs. These are hypotheses and theories that we are all wrapped up in. And the idea is to shed enough light for all groups of the research or of the Bigfoot researching community that we all can come to a place where we can agree on at least something. And so this is why we take all stories with a grain of salt, but at the same time understand that anything is possible. Anything is possible. It's a very naive thing to think that we're very restricted in possibilities, I guess. So yeah, we kind of look into things that we actually don't even believe in too, but it helps us shed light more on what's going on. And until we can get one of them to sit down and talk with us directly, one-on-one, and tell us, this is how things are, this is what I do in the wintertime, this is what I do in the summertime. Until then, everything's going to continue to be based off of speculation, hypotheses, and theories.
Yeah. That, and I'm sure you are like us, and something that we say all the time, that the more we learn, the more questions that we have, and the less that we understand,
Yeah.
I think just since we've been with this beast group family, this Bigfoot family, and that's what it is, it's a family. I've seen so many people kind of change their ideas a lot. They were kind of set, and that's kind of been uprooted a lot with people, I've noticed. I mean, and it's a good thing. You need to be open.
Yeah, I actually went through a very, very large change myself because in the beginning, as I was talking with you both when I was about 12 years old, watching Monster Quest and everything, what does that say right then and there to a 12-year-old boy? That says there's a monster in the woods right now. And so I'm looking at these things as monsters and not getting the response, not getting the reaction that I want and stuff. All of a sudden we start treating them as people, and we start collecting data solely on human emotion too, like the display of absolute human emotion proved to me over and over again that they are absolutely people.
It's important to not let your theories or what you think and set them in concrete, that you are not open to look at something else that it could be.
Yeah, and I think that's a big problem that we keep coming across in the Bigfoot field, and that's part of the reason why Legacy started up, was so that we could kind of bring everybody together a bit, because these, you know, we can agree to disagree all we want all day and not get anywhere about it, but it's like, well, this group decides, well, okay, they're of alien origin, and this group decides, no, they're of flesh and blood origin, and this group decides, no, they're of spiritual origin and stuff. It's like, and they're all constantly butting heads with each other, telling each other, no, it's this way, no, it's this way, and stuff. And it's like, we need a middleman. We need a middleman to bring everybody together and knock everybody's heads together and say, look, this is how it is. Anything is possible. So if you're stating that your theory is possible, you have to be open to the idea that their theory can be just as possible as yours.
Exactly.
Our thoughts tend to be based on what we experience. You have to remember that someone over here may be experiencing something different than these people over here, and they have to understand that. You can't just say absolutely. This is this and that is that.
Yes, and that's I love that you touched base on that too, because we are finding quite a bit of difference from East Coast to West Coast, from North to South. What we have noticed is that around like New Mexico area and Alaska in particular, we keep coming across the most sinister stories of them, and the most aggression comes out of these areas in particular, and even sometimes out of places like Mount St. Helens, Mount Adams area, and the Yakima area too. Mel Scahan, he is such a wonderful resource there too. This man, he's worked his entire life there. He knows all about them, and he's had to deal with some that have both raised the hair on his neck and made him feel at peace too, I guess. But if you listen to his testimony for the full thing the full interview that he did for A Flash of Beauty, it is absolutely jaw-dropping what comes out of Yakima. And I'm honestly jealous that I'm not there at Mount Adams with them right now. But as I was saying, the differences that we're coming across here we have the absolute pleasure to research clans that seem to be docile. They don't seem to have any aggression up here unless it's something out of self-defense.
Go ahead, Sherry.
No, I'm sorry, Mark. I was just going to say, do you think that's a territorial thing, or do you think it maybe is related bloodline somehow?
For the aggression, for them against each other or them against us?
Both. I think they kind of war with each other also, but what do you think?
I mean, yeah, that could be something just like, we have to look at them as like tribes, basically. Not every tribe's the same. So you've got, like for instance, over here at, in our area, we've got the Nez Perce, we've got the Blackfeet, and we got, Lakota too, and Cheyenne. And these guys all butted heads with each other long before Columbus ever landed, or the Vikings even. And I have to assume that if they are people, they are absolutely capable of living and carrying out life the exact same way as the tribesmen did back in the day too.
Go ahead, Mark.
Very interesting. Mitchell, let's go back to the beginning and let's talk about what it was like, researching with your mom and how you grew up into this. I'm really interested in that.
Well, I'm sure you guys have heard my mom's story of the Sullivan Lake experience that she had. She came across one that she saw him as very handsome. Actually, she saw him as an elder wearing a turtleneck, and then by the time she got up to him, she realized what she was looking at wasn't. I can't say it wasn't human or a person, because it was a human and it was a person. It was just a very, very hairy, naked one. But so this happened very young for me. I was probably about maybe 6 years old or so. So I guess I have to even track back, because I saw it then too. I didn't see it passing by whenever Mom brought her boat up to him and stuff, because I was with the group ahead, and I was even in my own kayak. So I'm off as a young boy doing my own thing. But after Mom had come to retrieve us, and she was pretty shooken up. She was like, "All right, everybody back to the beach. We're going to go home. It's getting late. We got to go now." And we get back to the beach, and that's a long paddle. And somebody had pointed at it, and there's this clearing at the top of the mountain that rides alongside the lake right there. And at the very top, and that's way up there too, we could see somebody walking around, some very tall, dark figure walking around. So I guess that was the first time I've ever actually saw one, was whenever I was very little, but nothing clicked for me, because Mom was keeping it hush hush at the time. She didn't want to scare us kids and whatnot. So, and then later on there too, we were living out Tiger Highway. So we had all kinds of weird stuff happen in that house. Our house was haunted at that time. We even knew the name of the guy that was haunting the place too. And we had strange lights that would appear out our window in the middle of the night. My brother claimed to have seen a skinwalker, and it was trying to lure him outside too. There's a lot of stuff that is out there that people don't really understand. And these were things that I was submerged in at a very young age and understood at a very young age. It was the same idea to me, not really an idea. It was the same faith to me as I know Jesus is real. I know Jesus is my savior. And I know these things are real. And I know these things, happen in the woods and whatnot. And then we ended up moving from Tiger Highway out to the Huckleberry Mountains. And I'm going to reiterate this story that I was telling you guys before the show started. But this is where things started getting a little interesting for me, because I started diving into Sasquatch after me and my friend Bryce had seen something this one day. And we had been walking along this logging trail out behind our house at that time, and it had just been clear cut off to the right. So it was woods all around us, except for the right. It was all clear, and there was one tree, I don't know the name of it. It's a Christmas tree. And it was a really thick one, too. It was probably about maybe, I want to say, if I can remember right, this tree was probably around 10 to 12 feet tall, and about 9 feet wide at the base. So, and it was very thick too. And so I started going out in the woods on this clear cut area. And every time that I'd go out there, oh, pardon me, I skipped ahead away from Bryce here. Okay, so let's revert back. Sorry about that. So my friend Bryce and I were going out. We were just doing teenage boy stuff. We had our 22 long rifles with us, and we were going to go bag ourselves a grouse or a squirrel and camp or do something. And we came into the clear cut area, and we were looking at this tree off to the right, and I had seen this very dark silhouette and what I could see, so the tree had kind of cut it off like right here. So what I saw was part of the head down to the shoulder, and then down its side, down to part of the glute, and then down to its calf, and then the rest of it was behind the tree. But it was standing. I could see it clearly. It was standing. And I nudged my friend Bryce, and like, hey, you see that? And he's like, yeah, I see it. Well, there was 2 brush piles that were off to the left side of the road. And we had positioned ourselves up on these brush piles because this tree was perfect in a triangle with these brush piles so that we could get a V pattern and both of us have a cross view behind it. It's a vantage point. That way we know wherever this thing's going, we can keep an eye on it and make sure it's not coming at us. And mind you, boys with 22 long rifles are dumb. But not very smart thinking there. Luckily, we didn't fire on it, and I knew that would be a bad idea to fire on something that we didn't have the full picture of. But by the time I had gotten to that brush pile and we had triangulated our view on it, I'm sitting there, I'm staring, I'm looking, I'm not seeing anything. And I asked Bryce, like, hey, you see it? He was like, it went behind the tree. I'm like, I should be able to see it. I don't see it. He's like, I don't see it. I'm like, all right, let's push up then. Let's get to it. And so we both crept our way up to the back end of this tree. And by the time that we had got to where we could see each other, there's nothing there. And there was no way for this thing to go anywhere without making noise, without us seeing something, without disturbing the tree that it was leaned up against. You know, something should have happened right there for us to be like, okay, there it went. But nothing. It poofed into thin air. And whenever we came up at the spot that it was at, all we saw was this giant heaping pile of dung. I mean, massive. And it was hot too. It was hot. You know, my dad taught me at a young age that if you wave your hand over it and you can feel steam, that means it's less than an hour fresh. I was okay, so I kept that in mind and everything, and I waved my hand over it, and it was less than an hour fresh. So what we were looking at had left that pile, and we were no more than, this clearing is no more than 120 yards into the tree line, and we had miles of adventuring to do. We turned right back around. We went home. We said no more. And it had grown a curiosity in me that strengthened over the years, because at first I was a little nervous going out because, I mean, I just watched that episode of Monster Quest. And as a young boy, I'm understanding this as a monster, not a person and stuff. So I kept my distance for a bit. And then I decided, okay, well, I've got my dog with me. My dog's going to tell me if there's anything out there. So I started going out with my dog instead. And she was really good by sticking by me and stuff and making sure I was protected. She was the best dog in the world. But I started going out, and the second I would hit this clearing, I would start hearing wood knocks. Thunk, 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 thunk. Like somebody was setting wood fence. And I'd grown up around the ranches. I'd grown up, you know, around all the hard work cowboys and stuff. So setting fence was kind of a natural thing out there. And I just kind of wrote it off as that. You know, there's somebody out here setting fence. I wonder where their property line is. I thought this was state land. That's interesting. You know, and every time I went back into those woods, I would start hearing wood knocks. And there were times I was calling for people. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. If people could hear me, nobody would ever respond. And it dawned on me one day, go find it. I'm like, okay, but at the same time, what did the elders say? You don't go chasing things like that. And the only way I'm going to know is if I find out for sure, and I go and I chase it down. So this thing had led me about halfway up the mountain before I decided I'm not going to find a fence. This thing, it just keeps luring me deeper. I'm turning around right now. And that, to me, has always stuck with me, as I'm very curious as to exactly what their intentions were right there. Because I get the feeling that it wasn't just one of them. I get the feeling that there was an actual clan up there that was trying to talk with me, or were they trying to lure me? I don't think that they were trying to lure me, because that infrasound that people talk about, I've experienced that many times in the field. This never occurred to either me or Bryce. Like, we had our guns with us even. It was clear that we were a threat at that point in time, at least enough to pack a punch that would really tick it off, but not necessarily kill it or anything. But we still, neither of us had the hair on our neck stand up or anything. And just that heap and pile and the most pungent body odor that you can imagine. And it's just like, and this is also something else that I keep experiencing in the field as well. But that was just before I had moved over here to the Hoodoo Valley, just outside of Spirit Lake, Idaho, and thinking, moving from a place like that, it's not going to get any better than that. Oh, it did, though. It did quite a bit better. In fact, this place that we had moved to had its own lake on it, and this lake was visited. And I have actual tracks that I had. I wasn't able to cast these tracks because I didn't know how to cast quite yet. But I had taken the pictures of these tracks, and I had my brother with me at the time. And this is like sometime in November, December, January. It was sometime in the dead cold of winter. We were finding 8-inch tracks barefoot, and 2 sets of them, and they were just all over the beach at the boat launch right there. And I took a few pictures of these, and then a few years later, I had gone back down there. Actually, not just a few years later. It was actually last year. I'd gone back down there to go fishing with my father-in-law, and I ended up capturing a video of these tracks again, and they're just a little bit bigger than what they were before then. But again, it's 2 sets of tracks of juveniles, that, if you would. Now, how am I to prove these tracks? I honestly can't prove these tracks. But the events that led up to the tracks there were, we had quite a few whoops in the night, quite a few calls. In fact, Sasquatch Sisters Northwest was able to document quite a bit of the howls that come out of Hoodoo Valley too, and quite the number of them, actually. But pardon me, where was I? But I honestly can't prove these tracks, but the things that lead up to them, like the structures that we hear, the whistles, the tree knocks, it points in the direction. And so, again, we have to take it with a grain of salt. And it's a bitter grain of salt, but it's still exciting because it's like, I know what that is, but can I prove it? I don't think I can, but I know what that is right there because they've been coming around for a good little while here now. And then we started doing things like setting up fruit stands for them and stuff. Mom had this tree out in the middle of the field that she called the sacred tree, because if you looked at the branches at just the right angle, it looked like it made Chief Joseph's face in it, which was really cool. It was really bizarre. But that's where she would put her plates of food out, as typically like either the end of a meal or some fruit or something like that. And they were often taken. And it's, oh man, I'm trying to think if there's been anything else in my past growing up that is added to this, but I think that's just about it, honestly.
Pretty amazing stuff. What do you think, Sherry?
Yeah. You talked about, which I'm not disagreeing with you about about them being a people. You got into more and more into the woo side. So where do you think that woo side comes from if they're only people?
I think it's coming from the things that they can do, and this is something that this might take some time to explain. I think the woo is something that is not necessarily something that is strictly for them, but something more of an energy source that any of us can tap into, actually. You see gardeners do this kind of thing with their gardens. They'll take copper rods and they'll stake copper rods surrounding their garden. And you know what that does? It keeps the bugs out, and it also it accelerates growth within the circle too. The earth has a natural flow of energy that is constantly going through it. And you often hear barefoot people talking about this a lot, that the more you are barefoot, the more you are connected. The more you are connected, the more you are able to do things that are a little on the strange side, like, for instance, astral projection or mind speak even. Now, here's the thing. The mind speak for me, at first, I was like, nah, no way. But we ended up proving it last year in some of our research. The astral projection is something that I actually grew up with, believe it or not. This was a skill that I had as a young boy growing up, and my mom was well aware of it too, because I had told her about this growing up, that I could get up in the middle of the night, look at myself, and walk around the house and stuff. And she told me I needed to stop doing that because that was a very dangerous thing. And later on in life, I tried doing that to an ex-girlfriend. Notice I said ex. It freaked her out.
That would do it.
It freaked her out. So she was actually on a volleyball tournament that she was going across state for varsity in high school. And I'm sitting at home texting her on my phone, and I'm like, hey, my sweater looks great on you. And she's like, where are you right now? I'm like, I'm sitting at home. She's like, well, what am I doing? I'm like, you're playing your Walkman right now. You got only one earbud in, and you're sitting in a seat all by yourself. You got two friends sitting right behind you and one sitting off to your right. There's nobody sitting in front of you. And she was mind blown. She was completely mind blown, but so was I. So was I at that time. I was like, wait, what? So, and then we started doing that for the rest of the evening. And we're in high school at the time. we're young, we're dumb, we're kids. And she had gone into, I believe it was a Golden Corral with the rest of her volleyball team. She was like, guess what's on my plate? And I'm like, okay, you got a surf and turf going on. You've got a T-bone steak, some crab, and a little bit of shrimp. And she was like, that's my friend's plate to the left of me. And I'm like, oh. And then I rehearsed her plate for her, and she was like, too late. And then she started doing the jealous girlfriend thing on me. And we ended up breaking up. Never mind all of that, like, mind-blowing stuff that just happened there. I'm sorry I got your meal wrong. Can I take over again? I mean, but so the woo, back to the woo side of things. If we are capable of these sort of things just by tapping into the natural resource that is given to us through the earth, who's to say that we're not capable, that we aren't capable of doing many great things too? And I like to look at that and think that we are capable of doing the same, but let's face it, we're not raised the same way. We're raised to believe ourselves in a third dimensional reality, and a part of this reality is also stating, you know, if this desk right here is solid and I see it and it's brown, that must be a desk right there. But what I can't see is something that can't be explained and stuff. And I mean, you can even go into this aspect with the explanation of motion, for instance, like like love and whatnot. It's not all about what you see. It's much deeper than that. And I believe that they are able to tap into this resource that the earth provides, and maybe that helps them do these things to where people are claiming they're either interdimensional or cloaking, even like that the video A Flash of Beauty, the second video, their sequel that came out, they documented one of them cloaking. And this like goes with eyewitness accounts and all these testimonies that have all swore up and down the same exact thing. And I just keep thinking that if you're to do this trick with your garden, and barefoot people are able to do things like astral project and whatnot, what is keeping this species of people that have been raised and immersed in this type of lifestyle from day one, where I'm 31 years old, I'm just now finding it out, where how am I to do the same thing that they can do? So where do I think the woo comes from? I think it honestly comes out of all of these fantastic things that they are showing people that they are capable of doing. And do I believe in the woo? I can't say I can rule it out. I haven't been able to. I've had one right in front of me and a buddy completely vanish into thin air. This thing that I have estimated being well over 500 pounds is completely vanished to both of us. And whether or not this comes from the magnetic energy from the earth, or us being on a different frequency than they are, is beyond me. This is something that is more best described in Mr. Ron Morris's Quantum Bigfoot, actually. He has a lot to touch base on the woo factor there and the spirituality factor. And in fact, he brings them both together beautifully.
Yeah.
to where he is like, you two groups need to stop arguing right now, because it's no different on either side of the fence, and yeah, so I'd have to say that the woo definitely is a thing, and they are absolutely capable of incredible things. Yes.
Yeah, I just see where Ray Dahl said that woo is unexplained science.
That's a good way to
And,
put it.
I know when I first got into this that I was strictly flesh and blood. But then I started having experiences that made me question, this ain't your normal flesh and blood with things that are going on.
Yeah, and it's also some of the things that they're that these eyewitness accounts are stating that they're doing, like time manipulation as well. Mel Scahan even talks about this, where he, in his interview, he had collected some hair quite some time prior to this event, this ceremony that he had gone through, and in this ceremony, they were making noises of things that that he was unable to explain. And even Ron Moorhead says the same thing with the Sierra sounds, that they were making sounds like slamming car doors or moving buckets, and you'd go out, check the vehicles, nothing's on the vehicle, no prints, nothing like that. So I guess it intrigues me in such a way that it's almost like a ghost factor, where ghosts are able to do this exact same thing. You see it all the time on Taps, Ghost Adventures. All these researchers that are strictly for the ghost and demonology side of things. You listen to these audio recordings of them, and you're hearing bangings on things that should have bang loud enough it should have left a dent on this drum, and this drum is perfectly left alone and stuff. So it's the manipulation that gets me. That's a big question for me entirely, is are they actually manipulating sound, or are they manipulating their time and place in time and space at that point in time? And just as ghosts are able to make these sounds and bang on these objects without disturbing them, what if they're capable of doing the same thing, the same as the ghosts do?
That loss of time is probably what creeps me out the most, and something that I do not want to experience.
That actually happened to my mom and Tanya on one of their expeditions, actually, believe it or not. They were going out to, we call it the Wendigo tree. And this is a tree that had been split at a T, and completely. And at this tree, there were previous researchers that disturbed the area, and not in a good way, in a very disrespectful way too. And after that event had occurred, my mother and Tanya had gone out to this area, and when they had gone there, they thought that they were walking back to their Jeep. And as I can remember her explaining it to me, it was as if they got completely turned around in a straight line. And there was an immense amount of time that was all of a sudden missing for both of them, too, that they both had made note on. And this was something that had struck me, too, because this is not the first time that has come out of Hoodoo Valley. There's another story of a hunter here up on Hoodoo Mountain, just right over here. And this hunter got all the way to the top of the mountain, didn't see what he was trying to find. And when he decided to turn around and head back down the mountain. He had come across something that had like drawn his eye down to the ground. He went down to like check out a rock or a print or something at his feet. And when he stood back up, he was back at the top of the mountain again. And this was a story that I had actually come across in the Hoodoo Valley Tales. That's also online too. Maybe I can pull up that later. But this is actually a picture of the Wendigo tree.
That strange is so perfect.
Yeah.
And you know, crazier, there are 2 other trees in that exact area split exactly the same way too. 2 others exactly like that. And we had gone out there prior to a few times, and we had marked off this one tree that actually had been pushed over the day after. So we had marked this tree with a ribbon to make sure that our trail was marked, because my mom was freaked out of that location ever since the time gap that she and Tanya went through. And so she tied a ribbon around this tree to point us in the right direction to get back to the Jeep. And we had gone back to this location, and that tree had been pushed over. And I don't have that picture on this, unfortunately.
We have some other pictures, another slideshow. If you want to now, we'll just kind of go through them.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
If you can get to it, you know, that upside down tree that you.
Oh. Which one we got here?
That may not be in yours, Mark. It was on the Facebook page.
Yeah, so this one just outside of Hoodoo Valley, about 20 miles outside of Hoodoo Valley, actually. So that's the upside down tree. Okay, so the photo to the left, this is actually a handprint that was left on Mom's ride, where she was staying, I believe, up on the saddle, I think it was, and her Jeep was rocked as she was sleeping. And so she actually made a hasty return home after that had happened. And when she got home, she saw these fingerprints, and those fingerprints stayed for a few months. Like the grease consistency on those fingerprints was far denser than the grease density of our own hands as well. The print to the right is a handprint that we had actually taken. And what was actually cool about this too is we were looking at it and we were like, that looks like a handprint. I went down, I actually could slip my fingers in all 5 finger holes too. And it curled down as if he was grabbing a clump of grass and just gripped just like that. And those finger wells went in approximately maybe an inch and a half or so deeper than my fingers could actually grip. And that pad too, that pad was just way too big for my hand to fit in too. So I had to kind of finagle my hand in such a way to actually figure, oh, okay, this is where he put his fingers. And then, yeah. So
you can actually.
That a level, I'm sorry. Was that a level surface or an incline?
That was actually a level surface. So the campground area right there, behind the camera is a little meadow clearing for barbecues and whatnot and tent camping and whatnot. But this is at the base of a swampy area that we actually found a nest that we've got photos and video documentation of. We found hair samples in the nest as well. But here's the thing. we leave that alone because we understand these things to be personal belongings of them. We don't take unless we are given permission. So we leave the hairs alone unless they're like an obvious gift at the gifting post. If we are to give tobacco and we go back, the tobacco's gone and there's a little clump of hair, perfect. That's a wonderful trade right then and there. But stealing is not what we are about. And that's how we view taking things like that from them, is stealing, actually. But so this was actually in a mound of grass that had just been mowed off of that little meadow area for camping.
And you see where that twig has been pressed in the indention, where it's level.
Well, that was part of my question. Why do you think they travel a lot on all fours sometimes, or why was it gripping down into the ground like that? Do you think?
I think they do travel on all fours. I think they do travel on all fours. Like not all the time, of course, but I feel like this is something that mid-tarsal break actually would help out with too, right. Because if their foot is able to fold completely in half there, that's got to be quite the advantage, actually, of being able to crawl much faster than what we can, because whenever we're crawling, we're springing off of our toes, and just the tips of our toes, not half of our foot at that point. So I imagine if they want to remain a low profile, they're going to, and they can move just as well on all fours as they can on 2 feet. Yes, I do believe that.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
So the track to the left is one of the juveniles that was taken in the Hoodoo Valley. This track measured around 8 inches in length. The track to the right was the one that I actually got to cast, and you can actually see the stick. You can see the stick going center of the mid-tarsal break right there. And if you zoom in on that, on the end of the stick right there, you'll see the end of it is poking up out of the ground, out of the depression. And underneath is a perfect cavity for that stick to fit right back into. And there's my slipper for a comparison. This track measured, I believe, 16 and a half inches, I believe.
Wow.
Trying to find that.
How wide was the print?
The print was, where is the measurement? It's right here. No. The print was, okay, a 37-inch stride from toe to heel. And we're measuring at 7.5 inches across by 16.5 inches long.
That kind of correlates with what we find.
Seems like most of the times it's. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, pardon me. One thing I'm interested in is the skunk ape. I'm wondering how the skunk ape, a lot of the tracks are coming with the thumb on the toe. Have you guys seen that too?
I have a picture of one right below our house at the lake.
So a few people I've been talking to believe these ones particularly to be the descendants of the Gigantopithecus. Now, I don't know how much weight that actually holds. Again, that's a theory to be taken with a grain of salt, but it is a good starting point for research, I guess.
Right.
All right. This tree right here is at site Alpha Second. So Alpha Second, you see on the picture to the right, that is the top of the tree. That tree was something like, gosh, 80 to 120 feet long. The picture to the left is the only thing that tree is balanced on, and it is perfectly balanced on this stump that measures about 6 foot high too, because I could walk straight under that too. And it was kind of dumb doing that too, because after I walked under it, I put my hand on it and it rocked. How perfect it's balanced right there. So whether this be an act of God, an act of nature, or an act of the forest people, this right here is something amazing that I have never, ever seen before.
Have you seen this more than once, and have you noticed that the limbs on it change sometimes?
This is the first time I've actually experienced a balance table before, but I've heard of them before after I was looking into this and talking with other researchers. But this is the only time I've come across it. I'm anxious to get back out there. It's just down the road, not more than 20 minutes away from me. But now that you said that, I am curious as to seeing if anything has changed on it recently, because right behind this tree, we actually found another one of those caches up against the rocks.
You know why I'm asking, Mark?
Yeah.
We have this one behind the house is not balanced, but it's been there for years, and the limbs, and they're not the limbs from the tree above it. They're different limbs that they change, leaned up against that.
Like change orientation or
Different
change
limbs.
type?
Different limbs.
Brought in from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Really? That's interesting. Are they continuing to try and keep it balanced?
No,
or are they...
This one's not balanced. It's just a log that's laying there, and the limbs on it keep changing. It's under another tree, but the limbs aren't from out of that tree, and they keep changing. I showed it to Mark when he was here.
I have seen that in several states, and one thing, I was talking to Kane Michael about it, and he told me, he said, make sure you're counting them limbs, and you will see, there may be 6 up, and then you come back later and there may be 12 leaning on it.
Yes, this is something that we are starting to take note of too in their structure building as well, that we have theorized that the amount of limbs actually is the amount of members of that clan.
Wow.
Yo.
That is the theory.
Wow. Miss Sherry,
so if you're
take a note of that.
I'm writing it down right now.
If you're seeing 6 up one day, and the next day you're seeing 3 up, 3 have moved out of the area, and if you're seeing more coming in, and that's how we understand it. Of course, theory with a grain of salt, but this is one of those theories that we are like, oh, it's got to be true. Come on. So,
yeah. That's a great nugget, Mitchell. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yes.
Oh, no, thank my mother. She's the one who who shed light on that for me.
Well, that was when he was here. That's what we were talking about. Why are they changing the limbs?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I could shed some more light for that. Yeah. Okay, so the picture to the left is the bottom of that balance tree. You see how high up in the air that is right there?
Uh-huh.
So the snap of it actually came from about 30 feet directly behind that group of trees right there that it's weaved in between, and about 8 feet off to the left of it, you can kind of see that stump right there. That's where that came from. So if that tree landed, or if that tree fell like that, it would be something of a miracle event for it to land on that stump perfect the way that it did and not crush that stump. Because here's the thing, I'm a journeyman framer. I know lumber, and that right there, you're looking at an extreme amount of weight suspended on something that is not supposed to hold that much weight, because that stump that it's balancing on, if you look at that picture, it's rotting. It's completely rotting. Yeah. It's got termites in it and stuff. It's basically a sawdust pillar at that point. It should not be holding that much weight, but it does. So that's very strange to me. The picture to the right, so these are structures that we've been finding all over, really, is that they take these trees that tend to fork, and they pile up a bunch of stuff on the inside of it, but the general shape of the build is typically identical to other ones that we've been finding. In fact, we find a lot of structures that they've been doing are completely identical to other things that they have put forth for us. For instance, do I have it? I do. Mark, do you have those photos of the flowers that I sent you? That sounds a little goofy.
Yes, they're coming up in the slide.
Yeah. So once we get into those flowers, then maybe I'll reiterate right there.
So while he's pulling it up, Paramedic had a question also. Do you think that, and I wonder about this too, that if the direction of the limbs change, could that be the direction? Are you thinking that's maybe a directional thing, or for others to follow or something?
That's an interesting thought. That's a very interesting thought. Again, you can't rule anything out at this point. So he or she makes a very, very good point on bringing that up, that this is something else that we need to look into as well. If the sticks are leaning in one direction, does that mean that they are traveling in that direction? I do not know for certain, but there is a new avenue to be explored. So the photo to the left, this is the nest that we actually ended up finding. And that we came across this actually on a complete accident, actually. So over the summer, I've been moving a house from one side of the state to the other so I can rebuild it for my in-laws. And since then, this area where this house was at a campground. I apologize, but I'm not going to disclose this area as it's still an active research location, and we need to protect our data and our research and the forest people as well. So we will call this, what is this one? Echo. This is Site Echo. And at Site Echo, or wait, is that Echo? Pardon me. No, this is Site Golf. This is Site Golf. So we were moving this house, and my mother-in-law decided to take a break, and she was like, "Hey, I saw something over in the woods over here. You need to come take a look at." And she took me into the woods, and she showed me a bunch of these structures. and they did stand out. They were structures. This one in particular was a sapling that was a pine sapling. So we all know pine grows straight up. It doesn't vine. It does not vine. This pine sapling that had to have been about maybe 16 feet in length or so was wrapped around a big bull pine and shoved into the ground. And at the base of that was an impression that looked like a footprint that had to have been about 12 inches in length. So it wasn't a very big one, but there was something that had stepped right there, and something had shoved that sapling into the ground right there because there was no root system, and forced it to wrap around the bull pine. So I came across the nest first whenever I was just exploring, and I was looking for more structures. And on this video that I have, it was way too big a file to share, unfortunately. And I'm not technologically savvy, so it's a slow process for me to try and get this all figured out to get out to you guys. But in this video, you even hear me talking, and I'm looking for anything that stands out. And I step around this bush area, and I see this, and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm looking for sure. And since then, we have documented many strange things in this area. For instance, I personally tested MindSpeak here. Now, I did not get a MindSpeak or a telepathic answer, if you would. What I got instead, this is how it went down. I offered some tobacco at the door of at the doorway of the nest here, because there's one side of this that's a wide enough hole that you walk through, and you can see the scuff marks of things going in and out right there too. So I left on a flat rock this pile of tobacco. And we believe in our culture, in the Lakota culture, that if you are to give, you are to receive as well. Everything is based off a trade. That way, everything is always fair. No one can ever hold anything against you, or you can't hold anything against anybody else. It's a very family-based culture. So after offering this tobacco, I stated, I want an owl feather. I want a barn owl feather for my hat. And off I went. We moved part of the house that day, and I had to wait for the next weekend to come back. And during that time, I came back, and we were showing a couple of cousins of ours, of the research group. We were showing a couple of the cousins this area, and on our way to go and show them the nest, my mom had seen one at that point in time, and she froze. I was way ahead of her with my mother-in-law at this point in time, because we're blazing the trail. We're trying to get everybody to there to see this incredible structure that they've left behind, and all the other structures that have been scattered around that area too. There's many more than just this nest right here. There's a whole lot of very small structures that were anywhere between, sizes like just this big, all the way up to taller than me and even bigger. Well, my mom had froze, and one of the cousins had asked her what she was looking at, and she pointed it out to this cousin, who then pointed it out to the other cousin, and all three of them had seen this individual standing off the road underneath a tree, staring straight at us. So meanwhile, myself and my mother-in-law are on the trail ahead of them, and we don't see what they're looking at. We're trying to gain their attention at this point in time. And so I turn around because they're not following, and all of a sudden, a rock got thrown and landed in between Jamie and I. And we both looked up at each other like, "Did you throw that?" "I didn't throw that. Where'd that come from? Everybody else is a football field way over there. There's nobody else here," and everything. And we're looking around, couldn't find the rock. And then I turned around, and there's an owl feather, and not just any owl feather, a barn owl feather. And that right there, like, it made my jaw drop right then and there, because I'm sitting there, coincidence or not, that to me is incredible. That's incredible to me right there. And you hear stories like this all the time. Like, my mom just underwent something the other night that was absolutely incredible too, where she had misplaced a personal item that was very dear to her, that they knew was missing, and she was looking for it and stuff. And she told me that she had done mind speak with them, and all they had said was, "We'll find it." And she looked high and low everywhere she went. She retraced her steps, and she found it in an area that she never stepped. And it happened to be back at the house behind her door, up against the wall. And this was, Mom, like, she has nothing to do with back behind the door with anything. So this whole time she's explaining this to me, like, I have no idea how I lost it, and I have no idea on earth, because I had it with me at the gas station. Why is it here? So pardon me. She said, "We'll find it and bring it back to you." That's what they stated to her. And so she's looking for it in places that she figured she lost it, because she had it up until that point, and then all of a sudden it just appears at the house. That's weird. That's weird right there.
Yeah.
So, and then we hear another story of a gentleman who misplaced a knife many years prior, and that knife was very dear to him. He goes back to this place that he had lost that knife many years prior, and all of a sudden it just appears in his backpack. Like, that is strange too. There again, it's like, what about the time manipulation? Are they able to do that or not? So
we're going to interject in here, because Donna West, and this is something I'm very curious about because I've experienced it too. Have you ever heard metallic sounds? Like
yes.
metal, that type of thing, and there's no metal out there in the middle of the woods or nobody out there.
There's something out here in the Hoodoo Valley that we all hear from time to time that sounds like construction, in like the middle of the night even, and everybody comments about it, that like you hear all that rumbling and stuff. Yeah, I hear the rumbling, but nobody knows where it's coming from. And this is a large area that this affects too and stuff. And even into Spokane actually are a lot of these sounds witnessed. Now, it's kind of hard whenever you get into the cities and stuff, because there's a lot of things that are happening underneath your feet that you don't see, but you can hear too. But that, again, yes, we have heard the metallic sounds that seem to almost radiate from the ground beneath you. But yes,
that's
yes.
One of those common denominators between east, west, north, south. That, I mean, I've heard it as far down as Alabama and Georgia, and as far north as Salt Fork in Ohio.
I've actually got the privilege of speaking with Jesus Payan too, who he does his research down in the southern states too and stuff like that. And like, so yeah, a lot of the stuff that comes out of the southern states too, it's there's a whole lot of difference there with the um I apologize, man. My mind has a hard time sometimes.
I'm glad it's
but
not
with
just me. I'm glad it's not just me.
their behavior, there's a huge difference between the behavior that we're noticing and some of the things that we're noticing in common too is like the whistling and stuff too. Jesus showed a video in his last presentation, which was awesome, by the way. It was absolutely amazing to watch his presentation at Medellin Falls. But he showed a video of him whistle talking with them and them answering them and them answering him directly. And this was something that like completely blew my mind too and stuff. Like you're actually talking to them. Like it might not be, a full on conversation, but you're actually talking to them. And that same thing ended up happening to me. Just this last summer, actually, during that camping trip.
Wow.
I got to escort a dog really quick.
Okay.
Wait, this is going to have to be a part 2, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely.
'Cause everybody's got questions. And
oh man, I am so sorry. I've got so much to talk about.
We love dogs. We love dogs. Don't feel bad about getting up, and we're gonna definitely have to have a part 2. And
I agree. This is a blast.
River Morris brought up something that I know that your mom has seen several times. Have you ever seen the little people?
No, actually, I have not. This is something that I am well aware of, and is something that is of common conversation on the reservation too. The little people, they blame the little people for everything over there. Actually,
Wow.
Now my mom told me this one story about the time that one jumped up on the hood of her truck.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I was there that night too, and I remember Mom saying that she saw something the night before and everything, but at that point in time I was probably like 8 to 10 years old or so. So it was beyond me, and it was the least of my worries. I wanted to go fishing.
Yeah. We'll get back to the slideshow and pull up the next slide.
Oh, great. So this is actually that what we're calling the cache that was actually right behind the balanced tree that we had found. This was actually right across the road from it, no more than maybe 200 yards even. And this is one of the caches that we have found. But it was actually the second one that we had found. We had found one before that at Site Delta. So the picture to the left came out of Alpha 2. This is something that your guess is as good as mine on this. What I see something that looks like a crib to me, something that looks like something for an infant to stay out of the weather or stay out of the sun or something like that, because this structure had been built quite a bit earlier than when that snow had flown. Right there, you can see that nothing right there had been disturbed in the snow. The snow had covered it. So this was built before the snow.
Larry and I found one similar to that in Alabama. And that was the first thing out of my mouth. It was just You know, maybe a mother wanted some type of shelter to put an infant in
Yes,
while they were
yeah.
hunting or doing something where they couldn't
Or
pay
baby was
100%
sleeping and he
attention.
needed to, yeah, or baby needs to take a nap for a minute, and mom just needs to go rip her hair out for a second, you know. So the picture to the right, this is actually the mound of where Jamie had her encounter during the camping trip. So that this mound is an area that she came back to visit quite often to use the outdoor facilities, if you will. Because it was a nice private area away from the camp and far enough back into the woods that nobody could actually see her, but not too far from camp. And if you notice, there is one sapling that has been stuck in the center top of that mound right there. We found 4 other mounds that correlated exactly with this too, all with a sapling stuck in the top of this mound. Now, my mom and I both came to the conclusion that, okay, this is intentional. What are they for? Because I don't know about you, but this looks kind of like a grave site. And if they are graves, this is something that we need to show ultimate respect to as well. And no digging, no disturbing, no trash left behind, no trace, no harm. So we actually took note of that and we carried on. If we can get to the next slide. So
here's the flowers.
Here are the flowers. Here is where we get down to the meat and grime of the research that we got to do last year. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read off of my tablet right here how I have it accurately timed and dated as well. So this location provided multiple sightings. We witnessed 2 individuals noted, both of them were male. Through Mindspeak, we were able to get 2 names generated as well. Whistles were witnessed on multiple occasions, copying the eyewitnesses' whistles, and birds as well. They were copying birds too. The eyewitness being myself. Whistles were also heard by 5 other investigators at the same time. Echo is the first location that we have ever, in Legacy Discoveries, have documented human behavior. And on August 6th, after Jamie was using the facilities, she encountered a rock hitting her from across the creek. Our team had then split for the weekend without cell service or any way of communicating with each other. So my mom and I and my wife, we all had work the next day. Everybody else decided to stay back at camp. There was my mom, her husband, my father-in-law, and 2 friends of ours that were staying up there. Okay. From where Mom and I were to where Jamie was approximately an hour and a half drive through the backcountry roads. And that night on August 6th, my mom experimented Mindspeak. While experimenting Mindspeak, Mom received 3 words in repeat: pretty, hair, and beautiful. After reciting this phrase to myself and the rest of the team, which was just my wife, we introduced the theory that this was a possible flirting attempt. Under the assumption that this individual was trying to gain the attention of Jamie and possibly accidentally hit her with that rock. The next morning, August 7th, Jamie was surprised to find a small gift from a secret admirer in her typical area. So that picture of the flowers was left on top of that mound, and you can see where the sapling is stuck in on the mound there. So where Jamie typically went to use the restroom, in the same location, she was struck by a stone the size of a 50-cent piece. A bouquet of flowers was left lying directly in her path without the rest of the team able to contact her outside of cell service. We couldn't tell her that our theory was this individual was trying to flirt with her, and she couldn't tell us about the flowers that just got dropped off for her. So that was August 7th. Without Jamie able to contact the rest of the team, the flowers had been left for another night, unknowing they were a gift intended for her. So Jamie then set up a rock stack to the left of the flowers, and with a little pinch of tobacco as well, just to check to see if anything was going to be disturbed overnight. On August 8th, the tobacco was taken, the bouquet of flowers was rearranged, the stone stack that Jamie had laid down was rearranged, and a handprint was left next to the flowers, in between the flowers and the stones that had been rearranged. So you can see in the picture to the right, the stack of stones. Yep. This is before the handprint arrives.
Wow. Ray Dahl has a good question. What kind of flowers? Were they edible or for medicine or?
That's actually very interesting. And I can actually add to that here in just a sec. Did I send you any more of those flower pictures?
This might be the only two that I put on there.
Okay. So
wait, there we go.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Yes. So the picture of the left shows how the flowers had been reorganized, and the picture to the right, you can see the handprint that's in between there too. So what we came across with this asterisk that we have, or that we now see in the flowers here, copied an exact asterisk that we had found just outside of camp. Now I'm going to show you a picture here of the flowers and the asterisk that was taken outside of camp.
Mitchell, it looks like the flower part is gone on those last pictures. Where that was the flower end gone?
No. A lot of that was cut off outside of the.
Okay, I was just curious.
So now that you see the orientation of how these pictures are right here, then we're going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to trace it out for you guys so that you guys can actually see. Oh. I've traced it in red. It's trying to show up. All right, bummer. But if I can maybe blow this up, but what we found was
you can see it. The limbs are just kind of small on part of it, so it makes it harder. But you can see
all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you take these two photos and overlap them, they are about 75% identical, meaning that somebody took some time to ensure that this symbol was accurately put together. Now, Your guess is as good as mine on what the symbol actually means. There's a few theories floating around as to what this symbol actually means. And one of those theories, I like this theory the best, is that it kind of looks like a longhouse a little bit. And so
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So it kind of looks like a longhouse. It's almost like somebody saying, "Hey, like, welcome. This is my home," or something like that. But of course, grain of salt theory. After returning to that site 2 weeks later, we actually ended up coming up with. Have you guys ever come across photos that have been manipulated in the field? Like anything interesting, like whenever you go to aim your camera at something, you snap a picture and something appears that doesn't make sense. Well, we've got all of these photos as well of all of these energy streaks.
Wow.
Missy got some pictures like that when we were hunting today.
And they're in every direction. Look at all of these photos. All of them have energy streaks through them in a similar pattern, but not an exact pattern. We've overlapped these photos, and it's not the exact same thing. It changes per photo, whether it be a small amount or something. There are orbs that are within these energy streaks too that seem to move around as well. So there's something else going on in that area that I like to call a high energy area, just due to the feeling of walking into it is just incredible. Like you just feel energized, like charged up all of a sudden. I'm like,
Have y'all experienced like batteries going dead in some of these areas?
Yes. So that goes back to my theory of, if they're drawing energy from the earth, why can't they draw some energy from something else as well? Batteries are a wonderful resource of energy to be harnessed and manipulated the same way that ghosts and demons do as well. So if they are capable of harnessing this type of resource and utilizing it for whatever that be, either cloaking, going interdimensional, or doing whatever all of these questions are asked for, I mean, I have a hard time thinking that it's any different there, really. Pardon me. But I honestly feel like that goes back into the energy that they're utilizing it, basically. And for whatever that reason is, it could be something that just feeds them too. So this is at Site Alpha. This is what we call the fence line. The fence line is an area that we don't know if it's either the little people up to no good or Sasquatch coming out here. Now, here's the thing, though. I still have the theory that it is Sasquatch that are erecting these structures, because for about 200 yards or so, or maybe it's less than that, maybe 150 yards or so, there is structure all the way down just one side of this trail, just one, nothing on the other side of the trail, everything on one side, and they all connect to each other. They like leapfrog and connect with a long stick here and a long stick there, and then they build another little hut and stuff. But this is the greatest area to take new researchers out into the field so that they get to experience something unexplained the first time. So anytime that we have people that are like, hey, come show us some stuff, I got just the place for you, and this is the place to be right here. What is very interesting about this location is that it might as well be in the middle of town. it might as well be in the middle of town because there are so many people that live in this area that it's incredible. This kind of activity is happening right up against a naval base, a fenced off naval base and stuff. Like, this stuff is happening right at their back door. So an avenue that I want to explore, there's a few friends that I still have in the Navy. I wonder if maybe I can get connection to somebody in that base to see if they've ever caught anything on their fence line before.
Mitchell, do you ever go and scope out the background in your pictures, enlarge it a lot, and then look in the backgrounds?
I've done that a few times, but I try to stay away from doing stuff like that sometimes because
paranoid.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like coming up with the false picture that I thought was a Sasquatch that actually ended up being a stump in the end because I needed to go back and check that and verify it and stuff. So when I blow up these photos and I look through them, I'm looking for anything that is direct and anything that is absolutely obvious. Anything else, if it falls under too much question, I can't verify it at that point in time unless I can get back to that exact same location, take an exact replica photo, and see if there's a difference between the two there.
Right.
But
you might want to check the picture before this out. The picture before this one that he showed. I mean, just saying, check it out.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. Like when you can do it at home. I can't see it well enough either, but there's some suspicious looking things there to me.
This is a very suspicious spot. I promise you that.
Well, to tell you an interesting story, Sherry's niece, Misty Haynes, had taken a picture and she had blown it up to look at it and found something suspicious in it. And you know how you can go to Google and do like similar photographs to see if there's anything else that it might match that's on the internet, and it pulled up Patty.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And they went back to the area to look to do it like a recreation of it, and the image was not there.
Yeah. We measured everything.
That's one of my favorite things to do in the research field is to try and recreate what they are doing, because I never can. And not just about the sheer size, it's about how they're also building these structures. I'm a journeyman carpenter, and I'm looking at some of the structures they're doing, and I'm like, huh? You know, and it's just, yeah, absolutely.
And then our last one.
Is this the last one? Okay.
Yeah.
So I believe this is another one of those mounds, actually, because not only do you have the upside down sapling that is stabbed into the ground right there. Yes, that one is, I believe that one is the upside down one. But that was just another documentation of other mounds that we were witnessing in correlation to the few others that were set up exactly the same way, too. And that still strikes me right now. It still gets me.
Wow. That's amazing. Man, we have gone over 30 minutes, but we have got to get you back on.
Part 2.
Yeah, part 2.
Part 2. I'm stoked. I'm very stoked. You guys have been such great hosts, I tell you what.
It's easy with a great guy. It's easier with a great guest.
Yes. Um,
Well, I
any
appreciate that. Thank you.
any final thoughts that you would like to leave with us?
Um, yeah, there's been one that's kind of riding on me lately. I forgot to mention too how I left the military. I left the military with spinal meningitis. So
Oh,
when you hear me doing the and losing track of thought, that's where that comes from. I never used to do that. I never used to stutter. I never used to lose track of my thought. So I just want to say I'm very sorry that I came off uh, uh, but I really appreciate the time for everybody listening in, because the more people that listen in on this, the more people we get in the game. And the more people that we get in the game, the wider this community grows, and the more and more we find out every single day. The more people we have, the better it is. And God bless everybody for watching and having this curiosity about them.
Miss Sherry, do you have any final comments?
Just thank you for the information and the interview, and look forward to the second one. I've got pages and
Yes.
pages of notes here to add to my books.
What
Excellent.
what a breath of fresh air to finally get to meet Mitchell, and I've said it before, I think the world of his mom, and thank you so much, Mitchell, for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Sherry. You both been so great.
And
Thank you.
I guess with that, then we'll say night night, footers.
Night
Stay
night. Get
on.
to squatching.
Stay on.
Oh, stay on.
If you would like to support Beast TV, check out our gear. We have coffee mugs, face masks, gaiters, shirts, and tank tops. The link is pinned at the top of the comment section. Everything is always marked down 20%. So come check out our junk.
This has been a Sawdust production.